Welcome to Inside the Canopy Files, a production of Canopy Realtor Association in Charlotte, North Carolina. What if your content could do more than just get likes? On this edition of Inside the Canopy Files, host and Canopy Realtor Association Canopy MLS President-elect Joan Good talks with national speaker and real estate content creator Katie Lance, who will share her proven strategies to help realtors simplify content planning, repurpose posts across platforms, and align social media with their business goals to close more deals.
Welcome back to Inside the Canopy Files. Today, we're diving into one of the hottest topics in real estate right now, social media. We all know it's more than just likes and shares. When done right, it can build your business, strengthen your brand, and help you connect with clients in meaningful ways. I am super excited for today's guest because she's the go-to expert on this subject. Katie Lance has been helping agents and brokers across the country for more than a decade. She's the CEO and co-founder of Katie Lance Consulting, a nationally recognized speaker, author of the best-selling book, Get Social Smart, and the force behind the Get Social Smart Academy. She's been named one of Inman's News 100 most influential people in real estate. And honestly, she's just one of the most fun and practical voices in our industry. Katie, I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. And she had a long flight last night and she's sitting across from me smiling. So I'm thrilled to get started. So Katie, let's get started simple. When you work with realtors, what are the biggest challenges you see when it comes to creating consistent content?
There's definitely a lot of challenges. As a realtor, they are working sometimes, 24/7. They're wearing 27 different hats. And so I think one of the biggest things that's important for a realtor is to have a schedule, have a plan. I always say if it's not on the schedule, it's probably not going to happen. And so one of the things we really advise realtors to do is to really, get into a good flow with however their business is. Some agents are solo agents, some have teams, some have been in the business a few years, some have been in the business decades. So it's really finding a system that works for them. I really recommend time blocking. I find that a lot of realtors tend to do this really well with other areas of their business, like door knocking or making phone calls. But if they can schedule time, I usually recommend at least an hour or two once a week, and then even an hour or two once a month to do content creation, get on camera, do some editing, posting, scheduling. It's really a lead generating activity if you think about it. So, again, time blocking and setting aside the time to create the content, to get it out there, and then again, get yourself into a system that works for you. I think that's the name of the game.
That's great advice. I know a lot of agents feel pressure, and I do as well, to just be everywhere and do everything and jump on every idea. How do you rein that in with realtors who are, as you say, working 24/7,
right,
scattered and picking up the phone and jumping off to do whatever they're supposed to do that day?
Yeah, well, it's really tempting to kind of jump on the next shiny object anytime there's a new platform or a new widget or a new app. And I always recommend for realtors that, well, look, I think the good news is I don't think they have to be everywhere. I don't think they have to be on Facebook and Instagram and, X and Pinterest and TikTok and YouTube and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I really recommend they do two big things. So number one, I think they need to be where they want to be. Where do they enjoy? And if they're newer to social media, it might sound silly, but I think spending a little bit of time just kind of being a lurker and exploring Instagram, exploring TikTok, exploring Facebook, seeing what realtors in other parts of the country are doing. What do you like? What do you don't like? Maybe even looking at other industries like the entertainment industry, the hospitality industry, and just kind of getting a sense of how each platform works, spending a little bit of time there and picking one or two places that you enjoy. The other piece that's important is where are your clients hanging out, your clients and prospects? And sometimes we think we know, right? We're like, oh, they're definitely here or they're not here. Well, you never know, right? So I really recommend reaching out to your database. If you have a database, which I highly recommend, send an email to your database and you might say something like, we're working on serving you better with how we show up in social media. And we're just wondering, where are you hanging out? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? LinkedIn, none of the above. And they'll tell you, they'll be really honest with, where they're at. So like I said, pick where you want to be, pick where your clients are. And at the end of the day, one of the things we're going to talk about at the expo is that, social media is rented ground. We don't own it. So I recommend too, taking a step back and working on a content plan that will go with you wherever you happen to be, whether it's Facebook today, TikTok next year, wherever it might be. So getting control of that, I think is just so important.
That's excellent advice. Thank you. And what I hear you saying is be curious. You're curious as a realtor. You're asking all the right questions on a listing appointment. Ask all the right questions for social media perspective. Yeah. So a curious mind and block your time. From your perspective, what type of content are actually converting for realtors right now? In other words, what's moving the needle, making it from a post to an actual client? How do you get clients to engage?
It's a great question. I think there's a couple things. I think one of the biggest things is an agent or broker has to show up on video, and they have to show up a lot, which I know is probably not the answer that a lot of people listening want to hear. Most people do not like how they look. They don't like how they sound. They don't know how to do it, and then they don't do it. But it's really important because this whole business, real estate's a relationship business, and social media never replaces meeting face to face. It never replaces a handshake or a thank you card. But when done right, it can really build relationships and generate business. And one of the best ways to do that is through a video. We don't connect with a stock photo. We don't connect with, kind of the same photo that 12 other realtors in the market are putting out. And I often see kind of this sea of sameness in real estate marketing. We see this a lot, especially during the holidays. It's like, oh, time to change the clocks. Oh, Thanksgiving's coming up and everyone's got the same, stock photo of the turkey, or stock photo of the pumpkin. And I really recommend you got to kind of get over your fear and get on camera and not just share, hey, 3 tips for moving to Charlotte, but if your mom was moving to Charlotte, like what would you tell her? If your best friend really needed to sell their house down the street in Charlotte, like how would you come across? And so the more you do it, the better you get. It takes practice. It can feel nerve-wracking. You can feel like, I don't know how I look or how I sound. But again, the more you do it, the better you get. So to answer your question, it's definitely video. And again, as I said in the beginning, getting yourself into a routine. So if you back up and go, okay, I'm going to post 1 or 2 videos a week. What does that look like? Okay, that's maybe 4 to 8 a month. So that means I need to take a couple hours to, when am I going to record those? When am I going to edit those? Who's going to post them? Where am I going to post them? And just, again, getting yourself into a plan, just like anything else. And then the last part of that question is you have to be there to follow up. So many agents will post content and then they get comments or DMs and no one's there to answer them. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. So you have to take a few minutes. And I recommend just like 5 or 10 minutes a day. Scroll through your feed, respond to comments, respond to your DMs. Even take a few minutes just to go through your own feed and comment on other people's posts. Be a good finder, and go beyond just, oh, great pic or happy birthday. Like say something meaningful. Again, it goes back to real estate's a relationship business. So you're building those relationships and you're creating business by showing up, by engaging, by being a noticer, and by putting out helpful content for people who are watching you, who are following you, who might be interested in real estate now or in the future.
That's incredible. I'm learning so much just sitting here with you. Most agents, I believe, are a little nervous and a little camera shy. Yes. But what I hear you say is you're making a relationship with your video. So you're becoming comfortable with your camera so that when you're recording a video, it's almost like we're sitting here right now instead of, oh my goodness, I'm staring, reading these lines that I should say. And the other thing that I think agents are nervous about is everybody looks perfect online, right? Of course, because we're not going to post how we really are, right? But when it comes to video, it's very difficult. You think, I didn't know I sounded like that. Mm-hmm. Is that my voice? Is that my hair? Oh my goodness, I can't do a video. How do you help an agent or how would you advise them to get over that hurdle of being trapped by themselves and their own fears? Yeah. What would you say?
That's a great way of putting it. Trapped by themselves. And I think that's exactly what so many agents and just people in general. I think if you're human, you get overwhelmed with, if you've ever watched a video back of yourself, there's this, kind of jarring response a lot of us have, like, I sound like that. And, I'm not a doctor, but I know psychologically we do hear ourselves differently. So how you sound to yourself is different than how the outside world hears, which is something you just kind of have to get over, unfortunately. But I think, again, it's like a muscle. I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. I can always tell when someone hasn't done video. Like we'll sit down to take a selfie or something and they have no idea, where should I hold the camera? I don't know how to do it. And it just tells me that you haven't done this a lot. So you have to kind of work through that. And I often say, like, look at your life as content. So maybe it doesn't start with like a post to the whole world. Maybe it's just a quick video that you're sending a client that you're working with. Maybe you are out and about and you're previewing a home for a client and you just take out your phone and record a quick video of yourself. You might say, like, hey, Julie, I'm so excited. I just viewed those 3 homes we were talking about. I'm going to email you in a second, you and your husband, all the details, but I'm just so excited. It's been so fun to work with you. I can't wait to chat with you. Okay, look for that email soon. And you can text that to them or send it to them. And the more you do those little, just sort of 30-second, you're talking to camera, almost like you're FaceTiming somebody, the more you're going to get comfortable with how you look, how you sound, where the button is, the angle. You'll know really quickly, like, I should hold it up. It's a little more flattering if I hold it up a little bit, Plus, if you're out and about and you're doing something with a client, you probably did your hair. You probably are in a position where you do feel good about yourself, which also leads me to say, record when you have time that you have taken the time to feel good about yourself. Some people are okay recording, with no makeup and just out of bed, and that's fine if that's you. That is not me, to be honest. So I take advantage of opportunities. Like today, I got ready, to speak at this event. I'm like, well, my hair's done, my makeup's done. I'm going to record a couple quick videos, So take advantage of those opportunities. And if you can have kind of a running list of ideas, things that you thought of, so that way when you have those few moments, you're like, oh, wait, let me pull up my notes app. What are those few quick ideas? I can record this real fast. So I think there's a couple things. I think you make a good point, though. People get nervous and you just got to do it. And I think also if you come at it from the sense of it's not about you, it's about what you're saying. If you can start to think about content that's going to be helpful, you have something to say. Everybody has an opinion. I could Google how to move to Charlotte, but nobody's going to say it the way you're going to say it. Like, I want your opinion, your advice. And so if you start to think about that and go, I do have something valuable to share, like that's a big piece of it also.
That's excellent. And what I understand you to say is make it part of your daily routine. Yeah. And then it becomes a habit. And then it's easy. It's like brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, getting ready.
Yeah.
I know that you're a big advocate of working smarter, not harder. And I think if we follow what you're saying to us, that becomes habitual and it becomes easy. And the greatest part is it becomes fun. How do you suggest agents take one piece of content and repurpose it? I know you said you don't have to be on every social media platform. However, if you have something good, let's say you've just had a closing and you're super happy.
Yeah.
This is someone who had searched for a year and they finally found their perfect dream home and you're happy, they're happy. How would you go about repurposing that across LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and everywhere?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And I think sometimes it holds us back because we don't want to be annoying. We don't want to spam people. But the reality is, if someone is on social media just for fun, like you and I are on it for business and fun probably too. But, if someone's just on it for fun, they are usually not on every single platform. They have picked their place of choice that they love, whether it's Facebook or TikTok or whatever. So I recommend if you've got a really good piece of content, and your example is great, like you just had a great client experience, I would take a minute and just sort of think through like what that experience is. You might even write it out, kind of type it out, sort of maybe even the story, as you mentioned. If you need a little bit of help with that, you could always use a tool like ChatGPT. You could go into ChatGPT and say, I just had an amazing closing. I'm going to give you all the details. Can you rewrite this in, maybe more of a storytelling format, or can you rewrite this in a great email I could send my database? And then once you have that, you could also use a tool like ChatGPT to say, okay, great. Now I want to also post a snippet of this on my LinkedIn. What do you recommend? Or how would you adjust this for Facebook? Now I want to get on video. video and talk a little bit about how would you adjust it for that. So I do use ChatGPT for some of those things. You want to be careful, read it over, make sure it sounds like you. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the worst thing is to have such a great personal experience. And then it's like, that doesn't sound like you at all. You know, you don't have to use ChatGPT. But again, I would say start with like, what's the story? I do recommend, like I said, sending an email to your database. If you're not doing a newsletter, I highly encourage you to think about doing a newsletter, even if it's just once a month. And in the newsletter, you can include, I love success stories, client success stories. It's a great way to talk about the fact you're successful without saying, I'm successful, you know? I would also capture a few photos if the client's comfortable with that. You always want to get their permission. And one of the ways to do that is you could say, I'd love to capture a few photos of you here at closing so you can celebrate this, so we can honor you. Is that okay with you? And of course, share those, with the client, tag them if you happen to be friends or connected to them on social. And then there's certain platforms too that you can almost replicate, like your Facebook business page and LinkedIn. They're both all about business. So it could kind of be the same post. It could be a couple photos, a little bit of a blurb, maybe tagging your clients, and it could be the same thing. Most often people are not going to see it in both places, right? So you could put it up on Facebook. You could put it up on LinkedIn. For Instagram, it's similar but different. I'd probably put a few photos, maybe like a little carousel post or even a 60-second video. If your client is comfortable, maybe you get them on video too, just like jumping for joy. It could be as simple as like literally jumping for joy or opening a bottle of champagne, right? With a little bit of a blurb also. I would share those posts to your stories. That's another way to repurpose because some people aren't scrolling through the feed. They're just looking through your stories. And then, like I said, lastly, I would probably send an email to your database. So it sounds like a lot, but again, people aren't in all those places. And that alone is like one idea and it's turned into, 7 or 8 different places that you can post. And not only that, I would say put on your calendar for a year from now, when you're wishing them a happy house anniversary, that could be another social media post of, gosh, I remember a year ago, oh my gosh, this family was amazing to work with. And it's their 1-year house anniversary. Like it could continue to be a piece of content. So that's what I'd recommend.
That is fabulous advice. The other big elephant in the room, there's all these social media companies. Yeah. They're super expensive. Mm-hmm. And new agents view this as, oh my goodness, another expense. Mm-hmm. I can't continue to spend money before I'm making money. But I heard you say, get out your cell phone. Yeah. I think people need to understand the easy hack is you already have your camera. You already have editing capabilities right in your hand every day. So if you could explain, okay, I'm a new agent and I'm being bombarded by all these companies that will make me look fabulous on social media, what would you say to those new agents?
Well, as a new agent, you're going to get bombarded with a lot of people wanting to sell you things, first and foremost. It's not just social media. There's that old adage, like, if you want to make money, sell stuff to realtors, which is just terrible. But unfortunately, everyone from a new agent to a seasoned is getting bombarded. Especially for a new agent, I would recommend, again, take a pause. Don't feel pressured to feel like you have to pay a lot of money for social media. There's nothing wrong with, at some point, working with a company to maybe help you with video editing, or to maybe work with an assistant to help with scheduling or writing some content. But especially if you're brand new, get comfortable. Like you said, everyone's got a phone. And I really recommend, especially for new agents, like take us along for the ride. A lot of new agents are like, oh, I don't want to admit I'm new. I want to hear your story. Like, take us along. You're going to your first open house. Like, what's that? What actually happens at an open house? Like, or you're going, like, what happened? Okay, so you got licensed. What does that mean? And just sort of taking people along with you for the ride. There's going to be a segment of people who are like, I love that. And it kind of comes down to like, you don't have to be all things to all people. There'll be some people who are like, oh, why is she doing that? Who cares? They're not your people, right? So like lean into who you are and who you're not. Again, as a new agent, I would just say document as much as you can as you're out and about. Obviously, you want to be careful with client confidentiality, but if you're not sure, ask your broker. Always double check and make sure you're in compliance as far as like sharing other people's listings. Every area is different in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed. But take us along with you, and I would say also take us along with you as you are exploring the community. I'll give one quick example. I have a good realtor friend of mine who moved from one community to another. So she'd been in real estate a long time, but brand new to a new area. So one of the ways she really started to establish her business is she went to a lot of local businesses as she was exploring them herself, as she was trying to find a new hairdresser, as she was trying to find the best coffee shop in town. And as she did that, she took a lot of pictures and videos. She would go up to the manager and say, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a new realtor in town and I loved this panini or whatever, is it okay if I post about this on social media? Can I tag you? And it was kind of brave because she's putting herself out there. But she made some great connections. First of all, she made great connections in the community. Second of all, she's got great content because it's her content. She's posting the pictures and she's writing something like, I just moved here. This place is amazing. Like, the next client I work with, I'm taking them here for paninis or whatever it is, So I think it's really powerful for a new agent specifically to, again, look at their life as content as they're out and about. Again, whether it's a panini place or a coffee place or whatever it might be, to highlight local businesses, to tell people why it's great, as they explore. And again, take people along the journey. You said something earlier where again, people feel nervous, like, oh, I need to spend this money. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be successful. Again, they're salespeople, you're salespeople, and there's nothing wrong with spending money to invest in your business, but especially with social media, you have a smartphone, so don't be afraid to show up. Again, share your journey. If I was a brand new realtor, I would do some kind of vlog style, or maybe I did sort of a day in the life where you don't have to necessarily do like a 10-minute video, but maybe it's just little clips of you, getting ready, going out, going to the office, meeting with a mentor. People love the behind the scenes of like, what does that really look like? You might even do some content around, maybe jobs that you've had in the past. Maybe you were a teacher, maybe you were a nurse, and this is your second or third career. Like, what's your story? What are some things that you thought about real estate and now you're learning as you've gotten in the business? So like I said, take us along with you. And the same advice I gave earlier, get yourself into a routine. It's really easy as a new realtor to just feel like you've got to be everywhere, all at once. So get yourself into a routine with your content and it'll start to come together. And, people will be like, looking at you like, who did you hire? And you can say, I hired myself. That's what you can say.
Well, it's wonderful to hear you say it so eloquently and talk about how easy it is. When you say it, it seems easy, but I think I'm realizing it is easy. Just keep it simple. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. I've been a realtor. Let's say this realtor is saying to us forever, I know everything. What I'm doing works. Why would I want to change? And we all know the business changes at lightning speed.
Yeah.
Real estate didn't for a long time, but it definitely is now. So what do you say to that agent who feels like they've got it all figured out and they don't need to get on social media?
Right.
What would you say to them?
Well, you may be surprised to hear this, but I actually don't think everybody has to be on social media. I actually think if someone has it all together and they're really happy with their business and their life and things are moving along, like, keep doing what you're doing. I often tell people with other areas of marketing, okay, some people don't want to door knock, but some people love door knocking. Awesome. If that's working for you, like, lean into that. However, I would say too, just know that even though you're not on social, and that is okay, you have to also understand that you might be losing some business because of that. And some people will never probably tell you either, right? You might lose business that you just don't know about. And so I think that you if you're going to make that decision, you want to make that decision in an educated format. For example, if you were to Google yourself, okay, let's say you go into Google and you log out of your accounts and you Google yourself, whatever your name is, Joe Bob Realtor, whatever it is. And you Google yourself, what comes up? What is the public seeing about you first? Is it an outdated photo that you took 20 years ago? Is it the fact you're at a broker that you're no longer at? Is your email correct? You would be amazed what I see. And so social media isn't just, oh, what do I have for breakfast on Facebook? It's really like, what is your online presence? And so I recommend at a minimum, especially if you're a seasoned realtor, if you haven't done this in a while, Google yourself. And what are those first 5 or 10 things that come up? And nowadays, it's not even Google search, it's AI that's coming up first, right? So you want to be top of mind if someone is Googling you or they're Googling someone who might, fit who you are, and just double check those things. I think that's super important. And then the other thing to think about, if you haven't sort of gone down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of social media, you might ask yourself, well, why? Is it because you feel like you don't have time? Do you feel like, a lot of people say, I'm too old, it's too late. I just want to be the first to say you're not too old and it's not too late. We are really at the infancy of all of this. And we all think, oh, everyone else is doing this. No, everyone else really isn't. Some people are doing social media, but there's also a lot of mediocrity that's out there. And so if you can be the one person who's like, I have been doing this a long time and I do have a lot of knowledge, and maybe I'll just start with, I don't know, a video a week, just sharing like what I'm working on, sharing my expertise, sharing things that I have learned from being in this business for 30 years. You would probably amaze yourself at the people who are like, oh my gosh, look at you, and again, you're never too old. It's not too late. So you have to adapt, and you have to make those good decisions to see where you want to be, where you don't want to be also.
That's great advice. And there are clients at a wide variety of ages too.
Yeah.
So you I'm hearing you say, mirror your clients that you work with.
Right.
They're out there somewhere too, looking for someone like you that they can make a connection with.
Yeah.
Because it's all about relationship.
Right. And if I can I add on to that?
Oh,
really
please.
quick
I would love that. Thank you. No.
Well, I was just going to say too, that especially if you've been in this business a long time, you might think, well, my clients are definitely not on social. Maybe they're of a certain demographic. And I don't want to say age because I don't think it's age, but sometimes of certain demographics aren't on social. But you have to remember that so much of real estate is a referral business. So if you have a great experience with, let's say, one person, well, that person is connected to their kids, their grandkids, their neighbors. And if they give your name out as a referral, especially for maybe someone who's a Gen Zer or a little bit younger, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to check you out. Who is this person? And if there's nothing online about you, even if you've been referred by their mom or their grandma, a lot of times it's like, yeah, but they're not active on social. How good are they? Right. And so it does, I think, reflect who you are and your expertise. And it's not just that one person. It's like, who is their bubble around them? Who's that circle? You want to be that person who's like, yeah, I'm going to help the whole family. You want to be that realtor for life. So that's also something to consider just as you're thinking about your time.
And that happens more often than not because business breeds business.
Absolutely.
Especially in a referral-based business like we're in.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about aligning content strategy with personal brands, business goals. Why does it matter so much? And how can agents start connecting the dots? In other words, we've talked about finding your story, finding your purpose, being authentic. Why does that matter to the consumer that's watching these posts, that's looking at these posts?
I think it matters to the consumer because there is sort of this sea of sameness with realtors, right? Unfortunately, a lot of realtors get kind of the bad rap. We get lumped into used car salesmen and whatever. Unfortunately, it's just this tired trope, right? But the thing that's different about real estate is for most people, it's one of the biggest financial decisions of their life. It's right up there with getting married, having kids, buying a home, right? And so a lot of realtors want to sort of keep the business and personal separate when it comes to social. And I do think it's important to kind of integrate the two. Not that you have to, again, share everything that you're doing in every private moment of your life. But this goes back to what we talked about, especially with community content, taking people along with you for the ride, so to speak, sharing your day in the life, sharing how maybe advice you would give your mom or your best friend if they are moving. It really speaks to the know, like, and trust and relatability factor, right? We hear this all the time. People do business with people they know, like, and trust and relate to. And that is the case for a lot of folks. There's been a lot of studies done about where referrals come from in business and whatnot. And that relatability is really key. And that relatability comes from how you come across on video, how we see you on camera. I'm going to connect with you when I see you, not when I see a stock photo, right? And so that really makes a big difference. And we also relate over sometimes small little mundane things. I have a good friend of mine who's also a speaker. She often says the magic is in the mundane. Sharing your cup of coffee, sharing your walk that you take in the morning with your dogs. It might seem like, who cares? But it's these tiny little kind of everyday things that we think are boring that actually help to build our personality, our brand, and it makes you memorable. So to go back to your question that you said a second ago, why does this matter for a consumer? It makes you stand out. It makes you memorable. It's like, oh yeah, you're the realtor. And oh my gosh, yeah, you're the one who has all the coffee cups, or you're the one who loves to travel, or you're the one with 4 kids or whatever. It just makes you a little bit more memorable, makes you stand out in that sea of sameness. And I think it also just makes you really comfortable in your own skin, because then you're like, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. And you don't have to be all things to all people. And you attract, there's that phrase, your vibe attracts your tribe. And it's just an awesome way of doing business. When you do everything we're talking about today, you'll have people who come to you, who email you, they'll DM you, and they'll say things like, oh my gosh, I see you everywhere. I feel like I know you. I feel like you're in my head. And when those people are ready to work with you, they're ready to work with you. They're not shopping around, calling 12 different realtors. No, they know you. And so it's such a great way of doing business.
Thank you for that. It is true, because when people move to a town, their first friend is their realtor.
Yes.
So they're a trusted advisor, but they're also a personal friend.
Mm-hmm.
You go through the emotion highs and lows when buying and selling real estate, and you're right there with them.
Yeah.
Katie, you mentioned a couple of times the Katie Lance podcast. I think that's a great tool for agents. What would you advise agents to take away from that podcast if they're following, if they're listening? A little nugget that would help them in their business today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started the podcast quite a few years ago, and it sort of developed over the years, a lot of different iterations. And we started it as really a way to reach a little bit of a different audience. We have a lot of content on YouTube, on, again, Facebook, on different social media platforms. But I feel like there's a little bit of a different audience on podcasts. And there's also something really kind of personal and intimate about a podcast, because people are usually listening as they're doing something else. They're folding laundry, or they're taking a walk, or whatever they might do. And so we've used it in a number of different ways. And I think if a realtor is thinking of using it for their business, maybe some of the ways we've used it can help them as well. So we tend to do like a monthly recap. I often will go in and do kind of a life and business recap at the end of the month. And I find that people really like that. It's a little bit personal. It's a little bit business. It might be, hey, here's what's going on with our boys. We have 2 teenage boys. Here's what's going on in life. My husband and I work together. Like, here's some of the things that are coming up. And it's a great way to talk about business and talk about life, especially for people who follow you and they're really curious about that. I also really love to use my podcast as a way to teach. So you mentioned earlier about repurposing content. A lot of times if I'm doing content on YouTube or other content or other platforms, I will take that and go, gosh, could I make a 5 or 10 minute podcast about that topic? Right. And I've already created the content. So now I can just look at it and maybe even use ChatGPT to say, hey, here's a video I created. Here's a transcript of a YouTube video. Can you help me turn this into a script I could use for a podcast? So I will often repurpose my content for that. And then lastly, I use it to highlight other people. And I think this is a great idea for realtors to interview other people. We have someone in our academy who does this really well also. He actually started something called, I believe it's like Coffee with Eddie once a month, where he like goes to a local business. I think he borrowed that from me because I do Coffee with Katie once a week also, which is fine. Anybody listening can borrow that. I don't own coffee. And so he uses it as a way to highlight local business owners, local leaders. He's even reached out to like local politicians, just local leaders in the school district, and really position it as, hey, I'm a local realtor. I would love to highlight you and hear what you're working on, hear what's coming up in the city, hear what's coming up in the school district. And let's be real, that kind of content is not going to go viral. Right? Just because you interview the superintendent, you're not going to get a ton of likes and views and comments, but that's not really the goal. The goal is to make that connection. Now you've made that personal connection. And then secondly, you're providing really good, helpful information about your community, your town, your area. And you are that voice that's bringing that. So for me, because I'm in the business of social media and real estate, I will highlight realtors in different markets, different folks we've worked with, different clients we've worked with, other folks in the industry. So it's really been great. And honestly, with the podcast, it's actually pretty easy to create. I mean, there's lots of bells and whistles you could do if you wanted to, but you could also keep it really simple. You could start with recording the audio on your phone if you'd like. And nowadays, there's some great apps. We use a great app called Descript. For anyone listening, it's just D-E and then script. How you spell script? S-C-R-I-P-T, I believe, descript.com. And it's a great way to fix the audio and edit really quickly. And then there's lots of platforms out there that will also just distribute your podcast. So there's places like Transistor or Buzzsprout that you can take your podcast, upload it, and it'll magically go to iTunes and Spotify and all the places. So it may sound complicated, but it's actually one of the easiest pieces of content, to be honest with you. And so I appreciate you asking. It's been great for us. It's been a great way to build community and business. And I think there's lots of opportunities for realtors with podcasts.
Thank you so much, Katie. I heard that every realtor needs to start listening right away to the Katie Lance podcast. Lots of nuggets in there. Good stuff, Katie. This has been so much fun. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, one of the things I always say is, it's really easy to listen to a podcast or you come to an event and you take a lot of, tips and notes and knowledge and then you write stuff down and then you go back to real life, right? You go about your day. I always recommend, if something resonated with you that you're listening to today, pick one or two things, progress over perfection. I often say done is better than perfect. It's a great way to show up, a great way to remind yourself, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just pick something. Heck, it could be this podcast. Like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're taking a walk or you're working out, take a picture of yourself if you'd like, or take a screenshot of the podcast and post it and say, hey, I was just listening to this great podcast. I'm not paid to say this, but it was about this, and this. And, again, just look at your life as content. Done is better than perfect. And just start. You got this. You got this. That's what I would say to anyone listening.
This has been so much fun, Katie. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Very valuable. I think it's very consumable. I think it's actionable. We just have to get out and do it.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for sharing not just your expertise, but also your practical tips that agents can put into action today. And for those of you listening, be sure to check out Katie's book, Get Social Smart. Visit her online at katielance.com and explore Get Social Smart Academy. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love if you could subscribe, leave us a review, or share it with a colleague who could use some inspiration for their social media strategy. Thanks for tuning in to Inside the Canopy Files. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting.
This episode of Inside the Canopy Files has been brought to you by EasyCube, the exclusive provider of EasyCube portable storage units. Need extra space or an easier way to move? EasyCube delivers right to your home or business, and you keep it as long as you need it. Pack it, move it, store it. EasyCube. Thank you for listening to this episode of Inside the Canopy Files, presented by Canopy Realtor Association in Charlotte, North Carolina. Connect with us online at carolinahome.com.